Vedanta Ashram, and many other devotees. I can see people from New York, from the West Coast, from people in California. Namaste to everybody. So the way we will do this is we will study a little bit of the text, and then we will stop for question answers. You can type your questions in the chat, or you can just raise your hands. Hari, is that a good way to do it? If you type your question, type or raise your hand, both ways, whatever you like. If you raise your hand, we'll call upon you. You ask the question, keep it short, pointed, and we'll discuss that. Right. So let me start with a short chant. This is the invocatory chant to the Aparokshanubhuti. So I'll start with that. Shri Harim Paramanandam Upadeshtaram Ishwaram Vyapakam Sarvalokanam Karanam Tam Namamyaham. It is translated as, I bow down to him, to Shri Hari, the supreme bliss, the first teacher, Ishvara, the all-pervading one, and the cause of all the worlds. That means the cause of the universe. So saluting God, we begin our study. Now, what are we going to study and why? We are going to study meditation in Advaita Vedanta, in the non-dual tradition of Vedanta, and specifically meditation there. What does meditation do? Why do we meditate, and how do we meditate? That's what we are going to study. Why did I pick this particular text? Because the topic of Vedantic meditation does not receive very detailed attention in many of the texts. In Drigdrishya Viveka, 6 techniques are talked about, that is true. In Panchadashi, here and there are some indications. Every text, there's some indication. Sometimes in for example, Vivek Chudamani also, there's a lot of verses which deal with meditation. Interestingly, in this text, Aparokshanubhuti, Sri Shankaracharya has talked about 15 different ways of meditation. And there, what he has done is very interesting. This is something you generally do not get in other texts. What he has done is, in this text, you get both yogic meditation and Advaitic meditation. The unique approach that Shankaracharya has taken in this text is, he has taken the entire system of yogic meditation, and using those terms, he has redefined each of the terms in an Advaitic paradigm. So the terms which are quite familiar to us, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, all these things, taken from a yoga context, and then he gives it an Advaitic meaning in each case. So we get a double benefit. We also get an idea of what meditation is in the yogic context, and that's a good thing, because generally when we talk about meditation, it is in some yogic way. We think about sitting in a particular way, breathing in a particular way, concentrating our minds in a particular way. All that's yogic. I mean, the varieties of meditation you get in Buddhism also are varieties of yogic meditation. We must not forget the Buddha himself had teachers whom he learned under before he went on his own way. And those teachers were, as far as we can understand from Buddha's own accounts, they were some kind of proto-Sankhya or proto-yoga. So yogic meditation is sort of the paradigm of meditation we have. And it's interesting to keep that as the base, the foundation, and then try to understand what is Advaitic meditation and also how we can do it. Once in a while, you'll find, as we go through this text, you'll find that Shankaracharya, sort of a little bit of mischievous humor, pokes fun at yogic meditation. So, for example, there is breathing, and in yogic meditation, pranayama is an important stage where you regulate the breath. You close the nose in this way and breathe in through this nostril and hold the breath and let go for this way. So there's a technique. And Shankaracharya, after redefining pranayama in totally non-dualistic terms, and then he says, oh, that one, the yogic one, that's just torturing the nose. Just you're twisting your nose this way and that way. But that does not mean he has a low opinion of yogic meditation. In fact, in this very text itself, Aparoksha Anubhuti, towards the end, he says that yogic meditation is a very good foundation for non-dual meditation. Yogic meditation is good. It's a very good preparation. Our minds are usually so scattered that we need a preliminary course of yogic meditation. If it's a regular practice, it's all very good. So having said that, what does meditation do in Advaita Vedanta? One must understand that these different paths are different paradigms. They have a different way of looking at spiritual life. They will take you to the same goal, but the approach is different. So for example, in the path of bhakti, the problem is that the way they see the problem, our problem is that God exists. We do not have faith in God. We do not surrender to God. We do not hold on to God. We do not worship or adore God. That is the problem. Abhakti. Bhakti means devotion to God. Abhakti means lack of devotion to God. That is the problem. And so the solution will be bhakti. Faith, devotion, worship, adoration, surrender to God, consciously, deliberately, as a continuous practice. So that is the paradigm of bhakti. In the paradigm of yoga, the problem is the restlessness of the mind, chitta vikshepa. The idea is we are pure consciousness, the purusha. One must remember the Patanjali system of yoga is cognate or is entirely based on the Sankhya system of Kapila. So they share a metaphysics and epistemology. We are pure consciousness, but we do not know it. We think of ourselves as this body and mind. So the problem there is that because of the restlessness of the mind, we do not know our real nature. Patanjali says, yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is calming or the cessation of the modifications of the mind. When the mind is calm, then our real nature is evident. Swami Vivekananda gives a beautiful example of the lake. When the lake is calm, there are no waves in the lake, and the water of the lake is pure. You can see through the lake to the bottom of the lake. Similarly, if you compare the mind to a lake, if there are no thoughts, no waves or ripples of thoughts, emotions, memories, the mind is calmed completely and clear. There are no impurities. When one sees through, as it were, to the bottom, or what is beyond the mind, what transcends the mind, that is the purusha. In Patanjali says, tada drashtu swarupe avasthanam. The nature of the seer, the witness, the consciousness, the real self is understood in its real nature when the mind is calmed consciously through meditation. Vritti sarupya mitaratra, the fourth sutra in the Yoga Sutra says, otherwise what happens is you are mixed up with the movements of the mind. Anger, desire, memories. Even when the mind is sort of quiet and blank, what do we think? I am angry. I want this. Or the mind is calm. I am peaceful. We are mixed up with the movements of the mind. The distinction between me and the mind becomes evident when the mind is calm. But the main sadhana, the main practice is quietening the mind and focusing the mind. That is Patanjali Yoga. That is a yogic approach. And we will see that. Now, I'm saying all this because this is not what we're going to talk about. In distinction, in contrast to the devotional approach, in contrast to the yogic approach, is the Advaitic approach. What is the Advaitic approach? The approach of Advaita is that you are Brahman. You are existence, consciousness, bliss, the only reality. The entire world and this little body, mind, personality are appearances of that ultimate reality which you are. The problem is you do not know it. We do not know it. We do not see it. We do not get it. We do not feel it. This is called ajnana or avidya, ignorance. And the solution for ignorance is always knowledge. I do not know something. The only solution is know it. So in Advaita, The problem is ignorance of our real nature, and the solution is knowledge of our real nature. Now, knowledge comes from inquiry. The Sanskrit word for inquiry is vichara. This inquiry, vichara, what kind of inquiry? Inquiry into what am I, who am I, or what am I? Am I this body? Am I this mind? A complex, am I a person that I think I am this Sarvapriyananda, what seems to be absolutely obvious to me that I am this person called Sarvapriyananda, this body and with a mind in it and with a particular personal history, born in such and such time, did such things, grew old and died. So is this who I am? And Advaita Vedanta challenges this. It says, no, you are absolutely wrong. You are making a deep, deep error there. You are the underlying consciousness, existence, consciousness, bliss, perfect in all respects. If only you would know yourself as that, then your problems are solved. So knowledge is the solution for the problem of ignorance, and the method is inquiry, vichara. Now see the contrast. Lack of devotion is the problem, then devotion is the solution. And the method will be all kinds of devotional practices. You pray, repeat the name of God, engage in ritualistic worship, all kinds of devotion, hymns and songs, and all of that, all the paraphernalia of devotional worship, that is the method. If the problem is restlessness of the mind, then the solution will be concentration of the mind. And the method will be meditation. That's yoga. But what we are talking about, in distinction to these methods, is the problem is ignorance and the solution is knowledge, and therefore the method is inquiry. And how do you do this inquiry? In Vedanta, we have heard this again and again, that you hear and you reason it out and then you meditate. Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Shravana is a systematic study of Vedantic texts like Aparokshanubhuti, like Drigdrishya Viveka. The fundamental texts are the Upanishads, and based on that, the Brahma Sutras and the Bhagavad Gita with all its commentaries, the non-dualistic commentaries, and so many texts like this. Not that you have to study all the texts. Each one of them gives you exactly the same knowledge. One could be enough, or you could just go through them one after another. That study under a competent teacher, if you do it systematically, consistently, that is called Shravana. Hearing, literally hearing. And it's not just enough to hear, you have to reason about it. That is called Mananam. And then meditate. There's a special word for Advaitic meditation which is used. It's called Nididhyasana. We'll see what it means. Now, in Advaita Vedanta, the method is Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Method of what? Inquiry. Why inquiry? Because inquiry gives us knowledge. Why knowledge? Because our problem is ignorance. Ignorance of what? Ignorance of our real nature. What is this real nature? Existence, consciousness, bliss. What is the good of all of this? It will solve all our problems of sorrow, suffering, limitation, death, all that will be solved. It takes us beyond sorrow and gives us lasting fulfillment. That is the promise. Now, what do these stages do? Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. The first stage, according to Advaita Vedanta, the first stage, Shravana, is the most important. In fact, the strict non-dualists, Advaitins, will hold that Shravana Deva Jnanam. It is by this systematic study, by this hearing, within quote-unquote hearing, from that alone knowledge comes. And the succeeding steps of Manana and Nididhyasana are just for removing obstacles. So knowledge comes through Shravana, and obstacles are removed through Manana and Nididhyasana. So once you do the Shravana, what happens? You know what is being taught, what Vedanta wants to tell you, what Advaita wants to tell you, that you are Brahman. You might say, I know that. You just told me that I am Brahman. I've heard it so many times. But it's not enough to just know the words that I am Brahman or you are Brahman. What does it mean? What does Brahman mean? And how am I Brahman? That clarity has to come. Now, once we have understood what the text is saying, we will have many doubts. It's inevitable. How am I Brahman? How am I not the body? I sort of instinctively think I am this body, I am this personality. But why does Vedanta say I am not this personality? Not only arguments, I must actually come to see it. It's not that I sort of have come to feel that I am the body mind through some argument. From my birth itself, I sort of instinctively feel I am this body and mind. Shankaracharya says that it is naisargika, that is, it is natural. It has come through us from a succession of lifetimes. We identify with the body automatically. You don't have to go to school to learn that you are the body and the mind. Without going to school also, we learn automatically, it comes to us. So this instinctive feeling that I am the body mind, I have to cut it down. I have to understand why Vedanta is saying that I am not the body mind. Not only the reasoning behind it, it also must be felt. Just as I now instinctively feel I am the body mind, I must also come to see that I am not the body mind. So this questioning, reasoning, that is mananam. There are many other philosophical points of view which also have to be set aside. That was part of the traditional way of mananam. What does the Nyaya school say? What does the Sankhya school say? Why are they not right? Why is Advaita alone right? All those things have to be reasoned out. All that is a vast field of mananam. Some questions will come from us. Some we do not think of, but the books raise and we think, yeah, that's a good question. And some questions may be so abstruse, maybe talking about areas of scriptural interpretation which we are not interested in. A vast range of questions is raised. I remember when I was as a novice, as a brahmachari studying Vedanta initially, once I hesitantly asked a senior Swami, I have a question about what you just said. I was afraid whether he'll be annoyed, or sort of feel challenged or insulted. And he said, oh, go ahead and ask whatever you want to ask. Better minds than yours have asked questions for last thousands of years. So all these questions have been raised and answered to our satisfaction and conviction. So whatever question you feel like asking, you must ask. So that is the stage of mananam. At the end of the stage of mananam, what do you have? You get clarity and conviction. In the first stage, what did we get? In the stage of Shravanam, we know what the teaching is. I am not body and mind. I am existence, consciousness, bliss. Chidananda Rupa Shivoham. I am that. This is the teaching. Aham Brahmasmi. That is the teaching. But in the end, I may have doubts. At the end of the second stage, I not only know the teaching, I understand it now. I can now tell others. I can explain it nicely to others also. I understand it. I get it. I am sold. It's very clear to me. A clarity dawns upon me. A kind of conviction comes to me. This is right. But at this point also, still the problem remains. The problem will be that I have this tendency to behave and react to the world as a person, as a body mind. I'll get this feeling that I understand it now. I get the philosophy. It's very clear to me. But in my day-to-day life, I'm still affected by problems of the world. See, the original promise was I'll go beyond suffering. I will attain lasting peace and happiness and bliss. That promise has not been fulfilled. I still feel there's a lack. At this point, some may say, I get it intellectually, but it's not real to me yet. That kind of question also may come. So the third stage is what we're going to talk about. All of this is setting the stage for what we are going to talk about. The third stage is meditation, nididhyasana. The purpose of meditation in Advaita Vedanta is not to give you the knowledge that you have got already in Shravana. Purpose of meditation in Advaita Vedanta is not even to give you clarity that you have got in Mananam. Now you have understood Vedanta. Purpose of Vedantic meditation is to overcome the instinctive ways of behaving as body and mind which we have got as a result of our past life, and to assimilate the new knowledge. Swami Vivekananda uses this word again and again, assimilation. He says that you have to see that I am that reality again and again. He says, do it till it tingles with every drop of your blood, till it becomes a lived reality. Just as right now we identify, I am this, and after proper Vedantic meditation, I am awareness. This will be effortless, automatic, spontaneous reaction. Just like right now we have a spontaneous feeling that I am this body. There we will have a spontaneous feeling, effortless feeling that I am, or awareness that I am awareness, I am existence, consciousness, bliss, I am that being, pure existence. That will come. So that is the purpose of Vedantic meditation. As you can see, Vedantic meditation is an advanced practice. Why? What do I mean by advanced practice? It assumes that you already know Vedanta, that you have studied Vedanta. It's you don't jump straight to Vedantic meditation. Even yogic meditation is an advanced practice. See, when you talk about meditation in yoga, it is the 7th of the 8 limbs of yoga. Ashtanga yoga, the 7th one is meditation. Yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, then dhyana. The 7th one is meditation. And finally, samadhi. So the step before samadhi, the limb which comes before samadhi is dhyana, meditation. In yoga also, meditation is an advanced practice. What we normally do, what is normally taught in the name of meditation, little bit of mindfulness, little bit of chanting, little bit of sitting quietly, that's just preliminary. That's just calming down the mind. Our minds these days are so restless that if a little bit of guided meditation, mind becomes little calm, we get a little bit of peace, we get a little freedom from the tyranny of the mind. We feel, oh, I had wonderful meditation today. That's not meditation. That's just a little bit of calming down of the senses, of the body and of the mind. This is good, but real meditation is also advanced. Now, why I'm jumping straight into it is because this retreat for 4 days, so we're going to focus on just the meditation aspect of it. I think no one here is an absolute beginner or newcomer to Vedanta. You're not hearing the word Vedanta for the first time when you come to this retreat. So I think I'm on fairly sure grounds when I say that. Most of us, we all know, we have a fairly good idea of what Advaita Vedanta is. That it teaches us, I am Brahman. What is the meaning of Brahman? Why I am not this body and mind? Various techniques of inquiry are there. Drigdrishya Viveka is there. Panchakosha Viveka, Avasthatraya Vichara, many prakriyas. All of prakriyas means techniques of showing us, convincing us, demonstrating to us, not only logically, but also vividly, that I am not the body mind, and that I am this unlimited awareness. So once this has been done, then the stage is set for what we are going to do. So this is an advanced retreat. For the next 4 days, we are going to concentrate only on that final set of practices, Vedantic, Advaitic Nididhyasana. By the way, these words are very ancient. They come from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Yagyavalkya is telling, the great master Yagyavalkya is telling his wife, teaching his wife, that Atma Vare Drashtabhya, Shrotabhya, Mantabhya, Nididhyasatabhya. The self, the real self, that you are Brahman, this has to be realized. Literally, he says you have to see this. How do you see this? You have to first hear about it, where the word Shravana comes from. Then you have to reason about it, where the word Manana comes from. And then you have to meditate, Nididhyasana. Just a little note on this word Nididhyasana. It's very interesting. The Sanskrit word Nididhyasana is a little uncommon. The usual word we use for meditation is dhyana. Meditation in Sanskrit. This word is related to that, but has an interesting twist. The upasarga ni, the one prefix ni, it means nishchaya, clarity, conviction. So already there's a clarity. We have understood what Vedanta is. We have gone through Drigdrishya Viveka, Paroksha Anubhuti. All the entire teaching is available. I have myself taught, and many other books and teachers have taught it. It's there. So I presume we have studied it to some extent. So a certain amount of knowledge or clarity is already there. Then there's the word didhyasa, that dhyana, so desire to meditate. Those who know Sanskrit, pipasa is the desire to drink. Similarly, didhyasa is the desire Dhyai chintani, the Sanskrit derivation is that when you contemplate something. So didhyasa means the desire to contemplate, the desire to meditate. Now here is a subtle matter. I'll just share it with you and then we'll go ahead. Advaitic meditation at its heart is impossible. It's not possible. What do you mean then? Why have you called us for a retreat? What are we going to do for the next 4 days? It's worth understanding. This is a crucial secret about Advaitic meditation. To meditate, you must focus your mind on something. When you focus your mind and you're studying something, that's a kind of meditation. In fact, the original meaning of the word meditation was to think. To meditate meant to think. So when you are thinking about something consistently, deliberately, constantly, that is meditation. So what you think about is an object of your thought. You are, even when you're meditating on God, you meditate on Krishna or you meditate on Durga. So there's a whole description of how you have to imagine the deity, visualize the deity, how you have to fix your mind in one spot and the heart, at the heart lotus, how you visualize the lotus, including the vivid colors, the light and the radiance. And on that lotus is seated the form of the Ishta Devata, and detailed description will be there. You try to visualize. It's not easy at all. You try to visualize and then hold the visualization. But the point is, it's an object. You are thinking of it and trying to keep your mind focused on that, moment to moment, holding on to it. That cannot be done for the self. The self is not an object. Drigeva natu drishyate, the very first verse of Drigdrishya Viveka. You, the real self, cannot be an object. After all, if that self were an object, what would it be an object to? Everything else is an object to you. You are not an object. You are there. Just because you are not an object does not mean you are not there. You are there, but you are not an object of thought. You are not an object of the senses. You cannot be seen, heard, smelled, tasted, touched. You cannot be thought about. You cannot be imagined. And therefore, you cannot be meditated about also. The real self, pure consciousness as it is not an object of meditation. Then what do you do? So what you do in Vedantic meditation is, this knowledge, you stay with it. I'll give you a little anecdote and then we'll move ahead. One of the greatest contemporary Shankaracharyas, you know, the Adi Shankaracharya established these centers in 4, some say in 5 parts of India. And there's an unbroken line of Shankaracharyas who have been heading these centers for 1200, 1300 years now at least. One of the greatest in recent times, I have not seen him, of course, well before my time, but there may be some senior devotees here who might have seen Chandrasekharandra Saraswati in Sringeri. So he was recognized in his lifetime as not only a great saint, a veritable Jivan Mukta, but also a profound scholar of Vedanta, of Hinduism, in fact. Anyway, so one great sadhu from Uttarakhand, from whom I got this anecdote. In their lifetime, in those times, in I think 40s or 50s, they had gone to meet, a group of sadhus had gone to meet this Shankaracharya, Chandrasekharandra Saraswati. And so the anecdote goes like this. This group of sadhus from Uttarakhand, Himalayas, they went there to him. And the Shankaracharya of Sringeri was sitting just in a cot, wearing a little dhoti, a very simple, skinny old man sitting quietly there. And even before they did pranams and even before they could ask any question, these sadhus, visiting sadhus, the Shankaracharya said, "Do you know what Vedantic meditation, Advaitic meditation is?" And they said, "No, tell us." And he said, "It's like, the instruction is to hit a rock, cut the rock with your sword. Cut the rock with your sword." What does it mean? When you say cut a piece of rope with your sword or cut a tree with your sword, you mean you strike that with your sword and it gets cut. But when you say you strike a rock, you cut a rock with your sword, it means you break your sword against that rock. You will strike it and the sword is broken. What does that mean? When you attempt to meditate on Brahman, on the real Atma, on the real self, which is the witness consciousness, not an object, what will happen is the vritti, the effort, that the clarity about I am the non-object, the pure subject, the drig, the witness consciousness, when you try to focus on that, the vritti itself will disappear. The mind becomes no mind at that point. That is the key to Advaitic meditation. In yogic meditation, the mind stops by practice of chitta vritti nirodha, by making all the vrittis into one vritti and then stopping that vritti also. And the mind merges into asampragyata samadhi. But in Advaitic meditation, the basis is avalambana, is knowledge, knowledge of the witness consciousness, which is not an object. Okay, I'll leave it at that. Now, let us get down to the little bit we are going to do today. So what we're going to do today is, in this text, the Aparokshanubhuti, there are many versions of this. This is the version that I've shared online. So the real work has already been done. If those who have not read this text, I recommend that there is a whole series of lectures available. I've given a whole series of teachings on Aparokshanubhuti. That's there. You can always listen to it step by step. We can go through the whole text. But now, for purposes of this retreat, we will just go to verse number 102 onwards, where Shankaracharya now talks about, the author is Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya now talks about Advaitic meditation, nididhyasana, and compares it using yogic terminology. So that's the thing before us now. I still haven't started. This is all preliminary preparation. Now we are going to plunge into it. If you have the text, you can follow verse number 102. If you don't have it, don't worry. I will translate everything. You just keep on listening. And the soft copy has been shared. Verse number 102 and 3 together. Yamo hi niyamastyago maunam deshascha kalata asanam mula bandhascha deha samyam cha driksthitihi prana sanyamanam chaiva pratyaharascha dharana atmadhyanam samadhischa proktanangani vaikramat. In sequence, the steps or the limbs, anga literally means limbs, limbs of meditation are said to be 15. So the usual 8-limbed yoga in Patanjali, Shankaracharya expanded that to 15. And he's going to interpret the whole thing in an Advaitic way. So what are these 15? Very quickly. Yama, the preliminary moral disciplines. Niyama, certain rules and disciplines. Again, we will see. Yama and Niyama are both moral rules and self-discipline. Tyaga, renunciation. Maunam, silence. Desha, appropriate place. Kala, appropriate time. Asanam, sitting. Mulabandha, the lock. Deha samyam, posture. Driksthiti, the direction of the gaze. Prana sanyamanam, pranayama, control of the breath. Pratyahara, withdrawing the senses from their objects. Dharana, focus. Dhyanam, meditation. Samadhi, complete absorption. These are the 15 steps or limbs. Yogic interpretation and Advaitic interpretation. Let's go straight into it, and we'll see immediately what Shankaracharya is doing. First of all, first step is Yama. Notice in these 15, the familiar 8 Ashtanga Yoga of Patanjali is included. In Patanjali Yoga Sutras, you will find these 8 steps or 8 limbs. But plus, he has added 7 more, which are also from Hatha Yoga texts. So Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. These are the well-known 8 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga of Patanjali. First of all, Yama and Niyama. Verse number 104. Sarvam brahmeti vijnanat indriyagrama sanyamaha yamoyam iti samprokto abhyasaniyo muhurmuhu. The restraint of all the senses by means of the knowledge as all this is Brahman is rightly called yama, which should be practiced again and again. Now, those of us who know Patanjali Yoga, you'll be, we'll be taken aback. This is not at all what is known as yama. In Patanjali Yoga Sutra, in the second chapter, you will find this ahimsa, satya, brahmacharya, aparigraha, asteya, yamaha. So these 5 moral practices are called yama. Ahimsa, non-violence; satya, truth; brahmacharya, self-control, specifically celibacy, but self-control; and then aparigraha, non-accumulation; and asteya, non-stealing. So these 5 moral practices are called yamaha. Now, moral or ethical life is the basis of spiritual life. So meditation is possible only in, basically, if I clean up my life. If my outer life is a mess, and if I have a guilty conscience, meditation is difficult. I've shared that funny story with you earlier at some point, I think. I like it very much, so I'll repeat it again. This man went to learn meditation to a yoga teacher. This is in Hindi. It works well in Hindi. I'll tell you in Hindi and translate. So this man went to learn yoga from a meditation teacher, meditation from a yoga teacher, and he said, "Dhyan sikhaiye, please teach me meditation." And the meditation teacher said, "Well, first you have to tell the truth, and you have to be self-controlled, should not be greedy." And this man was impatient. He said, "Oh, don't tell me all that. All those things we learned as kids anyway. You just teach me meditation straight away. How to sit, how to breathe, control of the breath, and how to meditate. You teach me that." Now, this yoga teacher, he said, in Hindi, I'm saying, "आप अष्टांग योग सीखेंगे या विकलांग योग सीखेंगे?" So are you going to learn 8-limbed yoga, or this doesn't work well in English? Are you going to learn, like a handicapped, a crippled yoga? 2 of the limbs you have chopped off. The yama and niyama, the moral practices, you are cutting them off, and you are keeping only the other 6 limbs. But do you want to learn? He says, Ashtanga Yoga seekhenge ya Vikalang Yoga seekhenge? So moral practices, ethical life is a must for spiritual life. Why do we need ethical practices? Why do we basically need to be a good person before we become a spiritual person? Multiple reasons. First of all, morals, ethics are the basis of civilized life. You cannot have a civilization, a community where people do not keep their words. I mean, contracts would be impossible if people do not keep their word. So laws, a civil society is based on morals. So for the sake of society, you have to be moral. Then for the sake of, you want to please God, so the devotional, if you believe in God, in every religion, the Lord is pleased with moral, with ethical life, is displeased with immoral life. This is very clear in every religion. If you do not even have a religious or a theistic perspective, a karma perspective will tell you the same thing. Immoral life leads to bad karma, that leads to unpleasant results. Moral life leads to good karma, and that leads to pleasant results. So whichever your perspective, theistic, even non-theistic, moral life is necessary for religious life. Again, the idea in Hinduism is parlok, the other world, after death. In other theistic religions also, heaven and hell. After death, if you want to secure your position, get a nice place after death, so one has to be a moral person. Dharma leads to swarga, adharma leads to naraka. So heaven and hell are decided on being ethical, non-ethical. Again, in yoga, just for the purpose of meditating, concentrating your mind, ethical life is absolutely necessary. Without, if the mind is guilty, is troubled Throughout the day, we might not think about it. We may even carry on our daily activities. But when we sit down to meditate, every little problem that we have got will come to the surface. Especially, what others have done to us, that also troubles us quite a bit, but not too much. If my conduct is fine and somebody else has done something wrong, that may trouble us for some time, but not such a big problem. But if I have done something immoral, that troubles me much more. It's very difficult to deal with. So immoral life must be converted into ethical, moral life for meditation. And finally, for the sake of one's own peace of mind. Just for once, it's a healthy, a deep sleep is possible only with a clean conscience. Untroubled conscience leads to untroubled sleep. So whether it's just your own peace of mind, whether it is for the sake of meditation, whether it is for the sake of good karma, whether it is for the sake of going to heaven, for the sake of pleasing the beloved Lord, or for the sake of just being a decent human being in a civil society, we have to be ethical. Well, for all these reasons, truth, satyam, most important. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, truth is the one tapasya, one spiritual austerity for this Kali Yoga. You try to hold on to that as best as you can. That is the tapasya for this age. So holding on to truth, even there, you are not compelled to tell the truth. You're just compelled. The obligation is not to tell untruths. Nobody is saying that you have to go around and tell everybody every fact of your life. That's crazy. But one must not deliberately tell untruths. Satya, holding on to the truth. Then ahimsa, non-violence. Literally non-killing, but non-violence. Not only in deed, we must not physically harm others, but also not harm others by speech, hurtful speech. And for that, it requires the removal of hatred from the mind. This is not directly relevant, but it troubles me that our free societies, which are the freedom of speech, very, very important. I think it should be there, every society, and it's most important. And yet, by freedom of speech, we protect the right to say hateful things also, hurtful things also. Because it is free. You are allowed to say what you say. So a person may have hatred for somebody, some group, and we allow that person's ideas to be expressed in speech. But my problem is, see, we stop that person before action. You cannot express your hatred in action. You cannot actually go out and hurt the person you hate. You can think about it, you can talk about it, but that's the limit of your freedom. Somebody said your freedom to swing your stick stops where my nose starts. So your stick cannot hit my nose. So my dilemma is this. We are giving freedom. You can hate somebody, you can even speak about it, but you cannot act upon it. Now, yoga psychology says you're making a serious mistake. If I cultivate hatred in the mind and then strengthen it further by speaking about it, somewhere or the other, it will be expressed in action. That's why violence comes. If violence is there in the mind, if violence is there in the speech, then violence will also come out in action, somewhere or the other. Somewhere somebody will overstep the bounds of law and actually go out and physically hurt people. But I don't know what solution can there be, because if the solution is to restrict the freedom of speech, that also does not seem to be a good solution. Solution has to be in the mental level. So ahimsa says that we must carefully root out, carefully watch the mind, not to let hatred against anybody else flower in the mind, even if it feels justified. Then brahmacharya, literally it means celibacy, and it can mean different things. For a monk, strict brahmacharya, celibacy. For a householder, it means being faithful within the vows of marriage, and all of these, but self-control in all senses. So that is important for conserving psychic energy, which is very much necessary for meditation. Then you will see there are two Asteya aparigraha, they seem very similar. Aparigraha means do not accept gifts unnecessarily, do not accumulate unnecessarily, and asteya means do not steal. And they seem to be pretty similar. Just don't be greedy. That's what it means. I found an interesting interpretation why this is there. There's a very ancient story about the human beings and the demons and the gods. They all went to Brahma, the creator, who created the universe, and asked what should we practice? What spiritual practice is there for us? And the story goes, a famous story. It goes, Brahma said, the same instruction to each of them. When the demons came, when the human beings came, and the gods came, but the three understood it in three different ways. The demons, they knew that they were cruel. Our main weakness is cruelty. We are cruel to others. So our practice should be daya. Da means daya. Be compassionate. That's our practice. The gods are given to wild enjoyment. They are partying all the time. So that's the gods means with small g, the devatas in heaven. So their practice should be dhamma, to control themselves, to control their senses. And the human beings, the real weakness for human beings is miserliness, greed. And so dana, to give, that is the practice for human beings. And therefore there are these two restrictions here. Do not try to accumulate too much, and do not steal, of course. What is others, do not violate that possession, that relationship of I and my possession. Do not violate, someone else should not violate that. Not accepting gifts, that sounds a bit strange, because especially in this culture where gift giving is a very big thing, it's seen as a good thing. People give you gifts and you have to put a lot of thought into giving back gifts. It's seen as a good thing. Why shouldn't you accept gifts? Swami Vivekananda, in his commentary on the Yoga Sutras, he says the mind loses its independence by accepting gifts. You become obliged. That's why you give gifts back. So it sort of balances it out. It's best not to accept. Of course, don't be difficult. Like people are giving you gifts and you say, I'm practicing yoga now, take your gift back. Don't do that. Be polite, and of course give things back when there was this young monk. There are feasts organized by devotees for monks in India. So this young monk who was there, very rigid in his ways. All the monks are sitting and the devotees come and give some gifts to the monks. So when this young monk's turn came, and this elderly gentleman came and offered something, maybe a dhoti or something, and he said, no, I do not accept. Now that's not the right thing. In that case, you shouldn't have come there. So what I'm saying is, these rules, follow them, be strict about them, but not rigid, not show off that I am following wonderful yogic rules now. So these are the 5 yamas. Ahimsa, Satya, then Brahmacharya, Aparigraha, and Asteya. There is an interesting insight. Mahatma Gandhi, his emphasis on ahimsa, non-violence. And he emphasized all these others also. He said we must hold on to the truth. And Brahmacharya, self-control, is also, he said we must all follow that. Those who are satyagrahis, fighting for the independence of India, they must not only be non-violent, but also self-control and truthful. So some of the people who followed him, they were a little confused. They thought, actually, their problem was, they thought it was a political strategy of Gandhiji to teach non-violence, ahimsa, as a way of countering the much more powerful, heavily armed British rulers. So we will take the policy of non-violence. But for Mahatma Gandhi, it was not a political strategy, no matter what Gandhi scholars say today. He was a spiritual seeker. And so it was a spiritual practice for him. Just as much as in Patanjali Yoga, the Yamaha, the same thing. So there's a very interesting letter by Mahatma Gandhi. He says, sort of little sadly, he says, they don't realize, those who are objecting, why do we have to practice brahmacharya? I understand truth and non-violence we will practice. But all these other things, why do you have to practice? So Mahatma Gandhi replies there, and little sadly, he says, they don't realize that it is much easier to practice all of them together rather than individually. You say, I will be truthful. But in my private life, I am sensual. I am in my public life, I am greedy. Then even at some time, I will not be able to follow truth also. So you see, these are mutually supporting. They are easier when we practice them together. I read it recently, it's not related, but I'll just narrate it to you. One nice anecdote. Swami Chetananand has mentioned it in his book, his Reminiscences of Senior Monks. This is about Swami Nikhilananda, who was the founder of the Ramakrishna Vivekananda Center in New York, and so many books, wonderful books he has written. So Swami Nikhilananda was a young monk at that time in India, and he happened to meet Mahatma Gandhi. Some of people around Mahatma Gandhi asked Swami Nikhilananda, that what do you think of Gandhiji's, Mahatmaji's spiritual attainments? Of course, he's a world famous political activist, social activist, but spiritual attainments. Who was greater, Swami Vivekananda or Mahatma Gandhi? Difficult question to ask. And remember, he's just a young monk and he's surrounded by all these followers of Gandhiji. He said, I think Swami Vivekananda was greater. He realized God and then set about to do good to humanity. Whereas Mahatmaji is just knocking on the doors of God realization. He still is there, advanced, but not yet realized. And he said that boldly. And that annoyed many people around him. And some of them went and reported to Gandhiji that this Swami is saying like this, that you are knocking on the doors of God realization. The Gandhiji smiled and he said, if that young Swami thinks I'm knocking on the doors of God realization, it is a great blessing for me. I feel highly privileged to think that he thinks this of me. That shows the real, genuine spirituality of Gandhiji. Anyway, this is Yamaha. But what Shankaracharya does here is dramatically different. He says, the realization that Sarvam Brahmeti, this realization, this understanding, this conviction, by this conviction, control your senses. This is Yamaha. And this should be practiced by the wise. And so not the individual practice of ahimsa, satya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. He says all of those things will come easily. But stay with this knowledge. What does this mean? Everything is Brahman. What it means is, how do we understand that everything is Brahman? Is just as in a dream, for example, the people you see, the places you visit, even you are there in your own dream, the body you see, you're walking around, all of that, upon waking up, you realize it was nothing but the mind. The mind imagined it all in the dream. Just as in a movie, everything that you see on the screen, the people, the places, the activities, they're all nothing but that light and the screen. It's just a screen. Whatever you touch, if you touch a person in that movie, it's the pictures. You touch them, you're touching the screen only. Every point, everything that you see in a movie is nothing but the screen. Just as thousands of waves in the ocean, they are nothing but water. Big wave, small wave, bubble, surf, whatever it is, it's just water. In the same way, this entire universe which we are experiencing is nothing but pure being, existence itself, with a network of names and forms. Imagine, just like the screen with pictures on it is the movie, similarly, just like the screen, there is being, existence, Sat. And just like the movie covering the screen, there are these names and forms, Nama, Rupa, Vyavahara, name, form, transaction. Person, man, woman, good, bad, talking, walking, thinking, enjoying, suffering. All of these are names and forms and activities. The screen underlying this is existence, Sat. That existence you are. Shvetaketu's father tells him, Tat Tvamasi, Shvetaketu. You are that existence in which the entire universe appears. The dream example shows how an entire world, including I myself and my experienced object, subject and object, can appear in the dreamer's mind. Similarly, in the place of the dreamer's mind, put consciousness. And in place of the dream, put this waking world. This waking world, this entire world appears to you, the consciousness, step one. In you, the consciousness, step two. as nothing apart from you, the consciousness. Step 3. See, the world appears to be outside us. Why? Because when we are firmly identified with this body, clearly the world is outside. There is something outside the body, there is something inside the body. But when you identify with with consciousness, you will see world, body, mind, they're all appearances in consciousness. To understand this, just take the dream example. In the dream example, you are standing, suppose you're standing in a park, and you are there, you can see your own body, and you can see that there's a whole world, the park is there outside my body, and inside my body presumably there is blood and bones and organs. But when you wake up, you will realize there was nothing outside, there was nothing inside, the whole thing was in your mind. Similarly, from the perspective of consciousness, the whole thing which you are experiencing in waking, in dreaming, and deep sleep, it's all in consciousness. This pure being and this pure consciousness are one reality, Sat Chit, without limit, and that is you. By realizing this, that everything which we see, Sarvam Brahmeti Vijnanat, Shankaracharya says, Sarvam Brahmeti Vijnanat. By this knowledge, this clarity that everything is Brahman. Where has this clarity come from? Shravana Manana. You've already done it. So I've skipped 100 verses. And that's why we are in the middle of, not middle, towards the end of Aparokshanubhuti. All of that has been already established nicely in the past 100 verses in Aparokshanubhuti. So in this one Brahman, in non-dual Brahman, everything is there, but not there also. Here a subtle understanding is important. It's not that there is this world and somehow it is all Brahman. Think about your dream. It is not that there is a park and there are trees and birds and people and I'm also there and somehow it is all mind. No, only the mind is there. And in the mind, all of this is being imagined in a dream. Similarly, here only consciousness is there. In consciousness, all of these appear. Not that there is a world and people and stars and planets and living, non-living, good and bad, and all of that is somehow included in Brahman. If you do that, it becomes Vishishtadvaita. All realities included in an organic unity. No. Advaita Vedanta says Brahman alone is, the world is an appearance. Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. This is beautifully illustrated in that letter. Mary Hale, one of Swami Vivekananda's disciples, American disciple, a young American lady, she wrote a poem to Swami Vivekananda. She wrote that, I have understood what you have taught. You have taught that all is God. And Swami Vivekananda wrote back, replied in a poem. He said, I have never taught such strange doctrine that all is God. She said that, but that's what you said. You have said this, that all is God. Swami Vivekananda said, what I meant was, God only is, all is not. See, look at the dream example. Is it that there are people and park and trees and a lake and sky and earth and all of that is somehow inside my mind? How can all of that be inside the mind? No, it is only the mind in which all of this has been imagined. It is only existence consciousness, this Sat Chit, infinite being awareness. There's one word which I like, this presence. It's a word being used by some Advaita teachers now in the United States. Presence, it's good. Presence includes two components, two aspects, existence and also awareness. So this presence, an infinite presence, in that this world appears. By this conviction, Indriya Grama Sanyamaha, all the senses and the mind can automatically be controlled. All the senses and the mind, the 5 sense organs, the 5 motor organs, and the mind, 11 of them, they are brought under control by this realization that it is all one reality, which I am. Imagine in a dream, if somebody annoys you, if you realize it's a dream, you don't have to hit back. You don't even have to feel annoyed because you know that person doesn't exist. I alone am appearing as that person. So just by the knowledge that all of this is Brahman, our usual reactions, fear, temptation, I like that, I grasp it, tempted, I'm scared of it, I want to avoid it. All of those go away when you realize it's a dream. All of those go away when you realize it's a movie, when you realize it's fiction. Similarly, you realize the same thing about everything that is going on in the world outside, even in the body, your personal health, body, mind, all of that is an appearance in me, the one undivided consciousness. By that, what happens? It is controlled. Why? How is it controlled? Instead of trying to control brahmacharya, ahimsa, satya, individually practice all these painstakingly, I realize there is no need for my senses to go outside. What will I go outside? In Hindi, they say, Jo andar hai, wahi bahar hai. Jo bahar hai, wahi andar hai. What is inside is also outside. The same consciousness which is appearing in my own mind is appearing there as the external world. What is there in that which is so attractive that I have to go out and get it? What is there in that which is so scary that I have to avoid it? Fear, temptation, those natural reactions will be cancelled, will be easily overcome when I realize I myself are in all of these forms. So the control which we do in yama is automatically achieved. See, the moment we have the feeling that it is not here, it is there. It is not now, it will be sometime later. It is not this, it is that. That is not Brahman. The moment distinction comes in space, that what I want is not here, it is in the Himalayas. What I want is in the Himalayas. What I want is not now, it is only after death I will go to and see God. What I want is not in this, it is in that person or in God. That separation in time, in space, in object, it's not Brahman. Brahman is that one undivided reality. What is there in heaven is here also. What is there in hell is also here also. So it is the same underlying reality which appears as this place, as heaven, as hell. Our attention is on that reality. Therefore, it is easily controlled. Sense control is still there. What the yama tries to do, the moral practices, the same thing is easily possible if we center ourselves in the truth that all is Brahman. Sarvam Brahmeti Vijnanat. And he says, and it is a practice to remain steady in this. He says, Abhyasaniyo muhur muhu. One should practice this. Practice this means remind oneself of this again and again. This is the reality. But for this, of course, the preceding practices of Shravana and Manana have to be accomplished. If you say, how is all this Brahman? Then Vedantic meditation is not for you. You have to go back to Shravana. Repeat Drigdrishya Viveka and Aparoksha Anubhuti and Upanishads. And so repeat, listen to that again and begin to get clarity. As you get clarity, then look around. Yes, this is the reality, inside and outside, one indivisible reality. Why am I so tempted by that? Why am I so scared of that other thing? Why does this disturb me? Why does that upset me? No. By this thought, a certain evenness of temperament, a certain stoic acceptance of the ups and downs of life will come, because they are only appearances, like a dream, like a movie. All right, we will go on tomorrow. We'll move a little faster tomorrow. But let me just take some questions. We have some time for questions. I already see raised hands.
Maharaj, first,
yes.
There are two people who wrote on the chat.
Yes, let me see the chat.
First one is Elizabeth. She has a two-part question.
Where is the chat? I can't see the chat, no?
Yeah, I can see one.
Okay, tell me.
Can certainty ever be 100% within the realm of phenomena? Or is the self-evident certainty, our identity as pure awareness, the only thing that can ever be known?
All right. Good question. The question is, first of all, can there ever be 100% certainty in the world of phenomena? One. Second, is the self-evident awareness, which is our real identity, is it the only thing that can be known? Let me just quickly answer both the questions in one word, very briefly, and then explain. First of all, can there be absolute certainty in this world of phenomena. There can be absolute certainty, yes, but not in the world of phenomena. What do I mean by that? I'll explain. The second question is that, is this self-evident awareness, which is our real self, is it the only thing that can be known? It is the only thing that we can be certain of. It cannot be known. It cannot be known as an object. Now, I'll explain a little more. What do I mean? That the question is, can there be anything that we can ever be totally certain of? Remember, this is the question that Descartes asked. His question of universal doubt. Whatever that can be doubted, let me reject. Let me find out if there is anything that one can ever be totally certain, which cannot be doubted. You remember the French philosopher, mathematician, Descartes? So what did he reach? The famous cogito ergo sum, that I exist because I think therefore I exist. I exist. That cannot be doubted. Why not? Let me doubt that whether I exist or not. I am doubting it. But even to doubt that I exist, I must exist. After all, who is doubting? If I say, no, I do not exist, but that thought, to think that thought I do not exist, I have to exist. So my own existence is indubitable. Why is my own existence indubitable? Because of thought. Now, Advaita Vedanta would go a little further, would say that both thought and the absence of thought are evident to me. Therefore, I exist. When I'm thinking, clearly I'm there because these thoughts are evident to me. If I'm not thinking, suppose thoughts are not there, Descartes would, according to Descartes, he would vanish. I exist because I think. So if he does not think, does he not exist? When Descartes goes into deep sleep, does he vanish? When he wakes up, is he created again? At Harvard University last year, I asked this question. There was a class on the philosophy of mind, and we were studying Descartes. So I raised this question because Descartes is talking about thinking as giving us existence, as the sign of existence. So when thinking disappears in deep sleep, in coma, when somebody faints, or in deep meditation, or your mind is just blank. So does Descartes disappear? Is Descartes recreated every time in the morning when he is awake and starts thinking again? So there's nobody had thought about this actually. So Vedanta says both thought and the absence of thought are revealed to me. Therefore, I cannot doubt my own existence. Doubting my own existence is a thought. I'm aware of it. Therefore, I exist. So my answer to your question, is there any total certainty possible? Yes, Descartes was right there. Total certainty is possible only about one thing, about this one consciousness shining forth. I am awareness. I am shining forth. This nobody can doubt. Think about it. Can you doubt it? Then what happens? I am shining forth. And then this shining forth, this awareness reveals the mind to me. The mind means thoughts, feelings, memories, understanding, antakarana. And then the mind shining reveals the body and the sensory system to me. This body, and then the sensory system, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, it reveals a world to me. Now notice one thing. Consciousness in itself cannot be doubted because that consciousness reveals the doubt itself. But that consciousness shining, mind is illumined. Through the mind and the senses, we are aware of this body and this external world. This in Vedanta is called pramata. Consciousness itself, sakshi, witness. Consciousness plus mind and sense organs, pramata. Pramata means knower. The very technical meaning, pramata means that one who knows by deploying the instruments of knowledge. Instruments of knowledge, senses, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and the mind, which thinks and ponders over all the sensory inputs. Now, what you know as the pramata can always be doubted. This is putting Descartes' insight. Thousands of years before Descartes, all these distinctions had been made clear you don't have to come to Vedanta for it. Sankhya psychology made it very clear. The consciousness itself can never be doubted. But that consciousness dressed up as the knower, in Sanskrit, Sakshi, dressed up as Pramata, what it reveals, that means what you see, hear, smell, taste, touch, what you think about, those things can be doubted. Only one thing is totally indubitable, your own self-shining existence, this presence. I'm using the words interchangeably. Consciousness, pure awareness, pure being, Atman, Chaitanya, Sakshi, witness consciousness, presence, all of them. They mean the same thing. That cannot be doubted. Is it the only thing that can be known? It is the only thing that is the knower, and that is the that reveals, self-reveals itself. It's called self-shining or swaprakasha. Everything else is revealed by it. The Upanishads say, Kathopanishad says, Tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam tasya bhasa sarvamidam vibhati. That shining, everything else shines. Consciousness shining, everything else shines. By its light, the light of consciousness, everything is lit up. Even more precisely, you, the consciousness, you shining, everything else shines. Everything else means mind shines,